yeah, first of all, Ed, what is SQL for people who don't know about it?
Yeah, I think to put it simply, SQL is the language for communicating with databases. For any organization that's working with data in an orderly and efficient manner, their data is going to be stored in a database. And to be able to manipulate this data, access it, communicate with it, you need SQL. That's the language. Also known as SQL, stands for Structured Query Language. And yeah, it's a really powerful tool to use in your organization when working with data.
Yeah, brilliant. And what will people actually need in order to take part? Say they haven't done anything with SQL before.
I think, well, in terms of your requirements, you don't need a powerful machine. It's a couple of free downloads. We'll be using MySQL for the session. I'll be providing an installation guide on how to get that ready for the session. We'll be providing data as well as part of the seminar. And yeah, I guess you don't need to be a programmer. You don't need to be a developer or a power data user. This seminar is aimed at anybody that's looking to leverage their data that they may already have in their organization in a database, or maybe they want to get their data into a better position. And we'll be teaching you the skills of how to set up a database. And then once it's set up, how you can work with that data and use the language of SQL to manipulate that data and apply it in your organization's needs.
And what will people have at the end of the session? What will they come out with?
I think that what I'm hoping for from this session is that it'll be a relatively easy learning curve. So SQL is not it's not as difficult to learn as languages such as Python or R. It serves a very different purpose. So they're more data science languages for modeling. SQL is very much the language of retrieving data, querying data, and also managing databases. So in 2 hours, we hope that you can go from a complete newbie, you might not have even been able to pronounce SQL before it started, and get to a point where you can actually get into the data, start querying it, filtering it, exporting it. And then we'll also explain how you can connect it with tools that you may already have in your system. So if you've got Tableau visualization tools, data science tools, or exports for Excel reporting, yeah, hopefully you'll go from zero to relatively competent in just 2 hours.
And we have all sorts of followers, a lot of them working in clubs in different roles. So, you know, sports scientists, coaches, analysts, and so on. How will different people find it useful to have these skills, do you think?
Yeah, so you don't need to be a power user of data scientist, data analyst to be able to use SQL. And there's a number of roles in football clubs where SQL would be massively beneficial to bring into your role. So whether you're a coach, a recruitment analyst, a performance analyst, a sports scientist, and even a head of recruitment, essentially SQL is allowing you to speak to any data you have in your databases. So instead of having to request maybe the data professional in your organization to retrieve the data, if you've got access to the database, you can go straight in there yourself and start playing around with the data and getting the insights that you need. And so I think to answer the questions that maybe people that are looking to leverage data would have, is some of these questions will be, they want to get better access to the data. They might want to get out of clunky Excel reporting that they're currently using. We've all been there with an Excel report that's got 100,000 rows and then crashes. So for people that want to put their data in a better place and start working with big data in football, such as tracking data, GPS data, and then people that just want to improve their general data infrastructure, maybe they've got CSVs all over their computer, all over their desktop, getting the data into a better position into a database and then being able to query it. And then, yeah, I think one thing I'd say is as well is it's one of the most in-demand skills in the data industry. So for anybody that's looking to maybe improve what they do in their role or look for a new role that's more data orientated, SQL, by learning SQL, it will put you in a better position to do that.
Fantastic. And why is it so much better than Excel? Because a lot of people do use Excel.
So Excel is a brilliant tool. By promoting SQL and encouraging people to work with SQL, it's not to replace Excel, but they do very different roles. So SQL is very much, as I said, it's the language of talking to databases. So by putting large amounts of data into a database, you'll be able to work with the data much better. Excel, as I mentioned, you get to sort of 100,000 rows. It doesn't work with it very well. That's not the case when your data's in a SQL database. And as we're seeing in football right now, with the advent of tracking data and GPS data, which all clubs have for their players, these are big data sets. There's 25 frames per second for these data sets. So you're talking about millions of rows for a single game. So you take that over the course of a season or several seasons, you're very much in the world of big data. And to work with this data, it can't be done in Excel. It needs to be done in a proper database. And that's where knowledge of SQL and being able to work with these databases comes into play.
Does SQL help you incorporate data from different departments within a football club?
Yeah, I think from my conversations and time in football, I think that's one of the areas where SQL can really bring some advantages to a club. So, for example, if you've got staff working in recruitment, you've got your sports scientists, you've got people handling the well-being data of players, or you've got trainers looking at the GPS data. Everyone's got their own different data set, but maybe they're actually working in silo and struggling to have conversations with each other, particularly data-driven conversations. So by getting your data into a database, as long as those different data sets have got common unique identifiers, like an ID number for a player, and that takes some time to set up. But once you've got that infrastructure set up, you can create yourself like a data ecosystem whereby you can take data from one source and connect it to another. So that can help initialize those conversations with departments that maybe weren't happening before. And I think, yeah, that's a common observation I've seen in football, and everyone's trying to get up to speed with their data infrastructure. So by upskilling people's abilities in a football club with regards to working with databases, knowledge of SQL to be able to communicate with these databases, that should enable, better conversations within a club and more data-driven decision making.
And this session will help people to do that potentially.
Yeah, so these sorts of, these are questions that all clubs want to answer. And I think what this session looks to achieve specifically is we're not going to solve your data infrastructure overnight. No, we're not promising that, but we're promising to teach you the skills, if you don't have them already, in terms of being able to communicate with these databases. Then if your club's already got one, or your organization's already got one in place, or you're thinking about implementing a database software in your club, then you'll be able to start working with that and being able to pull those insights or join those data sets together.
And just one final one, we've done masterclasses, as you know, in Power BI, Python, Tableau. Is this the first stage of the workflow, would you say, SQL?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think all organizations have different data infrastructures. There's so many products on the market. You've spoken about some really key ones there. I think where databases and working with SQL with databases comes into play is where you can store, maybe it's the raw data or the intermediate data, your process data. You can store your data in the database, query it with SQL, get really fast results, get repeatability in the way you're querying your data. But then you can either export your findings or the data that you pulled to work in maybe an Excel, in Excel, or to work with other tools such as Tableau via visualization or Power BI, or if you want to work with it in Python or R for your data science and modeling and start to do that predictive data analysis. So it's where you're storing your data is in the database, and SQL, as I said, is the language to be able to communicate with databases.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Ed. So just finally, October 25th, 2 p.m, 2.5 hours in total with a half-hour break in the middle. Tickets are available on the website, and I think it should be really good and really useful, as you're saying. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. Hope to see as many people come along as possible, and yeah, looking forward to it.